Oh God, it's only 1:10. We've only been recording for an hour 10.
Yeah.
Oh no. I think it's fine. Like we didn't dawdle too much except at the very end.
Yes, so it should be okay.
This time we watched Season 5, Episode 23, Village of the Giants.
Teens were big in the 60s.
They were big and mostly nude, making clothes out of anything they could find. It was a wild time. Before we get to that, though, hey, happy Turkey Day, everyone. It's definitely not Turkey Day. That has already happened by the time you hear this, but happy belated Turkey Day, everybody.
Yes. Well, I mean, it's a very belated Turkey Day for those of us in Canada.
That is true, but even if we were celebrating the day in which there is a stream of assorted MST3K films put on YouTube these days in memory of when it was kind of a bigger deal and we didn't have a Twitch channel that was constantly showing MST3K movies.
Sort of takes away from the specialness.
I poked in briefly, saw people chatting, saw it was a good episode. I don't remember which one it was even. Oh, the truck farming short was showing.
Oh, right.
And I was like, cool, this is still happening. And I put it down and walked away. Because first off, I was very busy. We've been very busy, which is why this episode is going to squeak out at the end of November. Yeah, I don't know. Turkey Day. I wasn't feeling it this year. It's very 2020, I guess. But it just wasn't. That's okay, though. I still like MST3K.
It's like, well, the jury's still out on that one.
Did you catch any of the Turkey Day festivities that were MST3K related?
Well, I mean, I saw a little bit of it because I know they were going to do a re-riff and they were doing some new interstitial bumpers. So I kind of had it on in the background while I was working my ass off. Yeah. And it was one of those things where it's like, oh, okay, this is what they're doing right now, largely with Zoom because they have to. So it lacks some of that finesse that the previous Turkey Day specials have had on YouTube, where you had Joel and company, you either with puppets or with Jonah Ray and Felicia Day. And with this, it was just like, hey, check out this Zoom call where people are like mugging in their living room. And I was like, not quite the same.
No,
not quite the same.
Well,
not the best introduction to the theatrical cast.
It's a shame, but what are you going to do? What you can do is instead watch the latest thing that the Mads have put out, which came out, I guess, a while ago now. We're a little behind on this one, I guess, but they did The Brain from Planet Arus.
Yes, which is a delightful bad movie and ideal for the Mads to riff, as it involves John Agar's electric kisses.
Oh, God. It's a real bad movie. This was my first time seeing it. It's real bad in a lot of different ways, and we could totally do an episode on it someday. Yeah, John Agar, who was also he was in Revenge of the Creature and The Mole People.
Oh, right. Revenge the Creature, of course. Yeah, he's the lead in that. I don't remember him at all from The Mole People, but
he plays doctors in both of them. And he was also in Women of the Prehistoric Planet, episode 104, which we have not done.
That's a lot of Agar.
Yeah, way too much Agar, frankly.
Oh, man.
Well, the Mads did a terrific job riffing it. It was a treat. I'm much happier having watched it with them. And they announced their next movie, which is exciting, because they're going to be doing a little film called Santa Claus versus the Devil.
AKA Santa Claus.
AKA Santa Claus, which we covered in the MST3K version back in episode 19.
Yeah, and this is going to make for a re-riff of a re-riff in a way, because Riff Tracks also did it later on, or I guess earlier on. And they had covered the exact same film. It was Bill Corbett and Kevin Murphy and Mike Nelson. Now we have Trace and Frank doing it, perhaps for the definitive riff.
Maybe. Just can't get enough of that public domain Christmas-themed action.
It is a delightful film. Much like when Cinematic Titanic went back to Santa Claus Conquers the Martians. It's like, I get it.
Yeah.
I get why you'd want to bring this one back.
Anyway, that's happening on December 15th. Get your tickets now. Link in the show notes. It's going to be a time. They've always been great. I'm looking forward to it. It'll get me in my Christmas mood.
Yeah, you've got to get into the spirit of things, and the best way to do it is with the delightful comedy stylings of Trace and Frank. The Mads are it, friends. Let's face it. There hasn't been an MST3K season 13, but there has been a great alternative with these Mad shows. You've got to see them. They're great.
They are really good. And I was absolutely thinking that as I was watching it, like, this is the season 13 I want.
Yeah.
Oh, just give me a few skits of the two of them doing patter, hopefully in the same room.
And Frank was an excellent Tom Servo in that one DVD sketch. So come on.
There you go. All right. But enough of that. We need to talk about something very old now, which is to say this episode, Village of the Giants.
All right. I'll allow it. This time we watch Season 5, Episode 23, Village of the Giants. Kids come a-running for the great taste of goo. Goo, of course, being one of the inventions of a little whiz kid who goes by Genius, played by Ron Howard. This goo comes with a heavy price, because it makes everything that eats it real heavy. Get it? Because whatever eats it turns big, heavy. Anyway, this goo, created by the prepubescent Ron Howard, is coveted by every teen in town. Good teen Tommy Kirk wants to use the goo to feed to animals for some enormous barbecues, as is the fate of two ducks who eat the goo early on. Yet, a group of evil teens, more or less led by Beau Bridges, steal the goo and eat it themselves. So the amazing colossal teens, more or less led by a giant Beau Bridges, run rampant in a town that barely has any adults in it. Hell, none of the giant teens seem to have parents. As a result, the amazing colossal teens make the townsfolk deliver them gallons of cola and buckets of fried chicken, while the 50-foot delinquents lounge around in homemade togas and hold several townsfolk hostage. Luckily, it's Ron Howard to the rescue as little genius develops an antidote to his growth goo and sprays it all over the giant teens. The giant teens shrink back down to size, which makes sense given the film's logic, and so do the togas they made out of theater curtains, which makes no sense whatsoever. The bad teens are allowed to run off without punishment for reasons unknown, and of course they make haste. Well, they mostly run away until they are stopped by a group of little people who ask for directions to the town with the miracle growth goo. Hilarious. The end.
Meanwhile, on the satellite of love, it's workout day, a very special day that comes but once a quarter. Such a devoted fitness regime is frankly too active for my needs, but it seems to keep them in shape. Afterwards, Mike abuses their juicing machine by juicing some eggs and bacon. Ugh. But none of that matters because down in Deep 13, Dr. Forrester is firing TV's Frank. How could he? Poor Frank, he has no idea what to do with himself, and he ends up just sort of lingering about the ship in his underwear. After some movie, Dr. F gives a job interview to Frank's new replacement, Torgo, from Manos the Hands of Fate. It goes, pretty well, but Dr. F has to tell him the most important office rule.
Right. First rule, no theme music. What theme music?
After some more movie, Frank talks to Mike and the Bots on the Hexfield view screen. He's been hiding out in the Deep 13 closet, and he'd really like them to sign his unemployment paperwork, but they don't want to get accused of fraud, so they decide to give him a little interview. They don't hire him. After some more movie, Mike and the Bots sing a special song, The Greatest Frank of All, over a montage of Frank's frankest moments. It ends on a particularly touching note.
'Cause Frank is the best Frank that's ever happened to me.
Please don't go.
Bye-bye, Frank. You were enjoyed.
This inspires Frank to fight to get his job back. And after the movie, it's time to read letters from viewers in support of Frank, and Frank is now ready. He tells Torgo that the best way to show his appreciation to Dr. F for the sweet new job is to... Well, he whispers it, and we can't quite make it out. And then Torgo heads off camera to deliver his show of appreciation, which we don't quite see, but it sure is implied that there's some of that kissy stuff. But it turns out Dr. F doesn't appreciate it, and fires Torgo, and rehires Frank, figures out that that was his plan all along, and kills him. Over the end credits, the greatest Frank of all plays, and then, the surprise twist, the episode is dedicated to another Frank, Frank Zappa, who had recently passed at time of airing. Oh, well, that's sweet, actually. Huh. Let me quickly add that to our topic list. All right, the end.
Well, this is the one you were looking forward to. What was it like upon rewatch?
It's such a good episode. It's almost painfully good. I don't know. Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I enjoyed it well enough.
I really love a lot about this episode. I guess there's something about these like brightly colored teen movies, I guess starring Tommy Kirk, that particularly appeals to me. There's so much in them that I find delightful anyways, but that aren't actually good. Like the colors are usually really striking, and like the weird teen shenanigans and some of the set pieces and they're just ridiculous in a very good way. But having some really sharp riffs just makes it all even more palatable. And it becomes a pleasure plus pleasure thing.
Yeah, I get you. It's two great tastes that taste great together, like a Reese peanut butter cup.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's a lot to see here. It's funny, I always remember this episode coming with a short, but it does not. It's the one thing that would have put it over the top. But there is a lot of, like, it's a big goofy cast, and it's a big goofy script, and it's a big goofy thing delivered by Mr. Big himself, Bert I. Gordon, and it's so silly. It's a nice kind of change of pace from, the usual giant person or creature fare, which takes itself a little more seriously than this, or is just whacked out like Gamera. Right. This is somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, it's a movie that doesn't take itself seriously at all. It's just meant to be a silly series of showpieces where you've got, let's see what we can do in this scene. Okay, we're going to have a big dog and a big spider, and now we're going to have some big ducks, and now we're going to have big teens, and now we're going to have someone clutching to the breast of these big teens.
Which is the most amazing part of the movie, and indeed, I think the producers must have agreed, because they made that the poster.
Yeah, well, I mean, wouldn't you? Wouldn't you just? I mean, that cleavage is the star of the show.
I wonder what happened to that giant breast prop.
That's a good question. I didn't research that.
I assume Bert I. Gordon naps on it. I assume that's his bed.
Yes. And also, like, I enjoyed the skits as well. The whole arc with Frank was really well done, I thought. Mm-hmm. I enjoyed, the little cameo of Torgo appearing. Yes,
I forgot Torgo was in this episode, so that was like a real nice surprise. It's like, oh, of course Torgo is the replacement. Who else would it be? It was like, it was down to him or Mr. B Natural.
Right, exactly. And you get to see Frank in his underwear.
Yes.
On the couch.
A little something for the ladies.
A little something for all of us, I think, on these cold winter nights. Young Frank Conniff's pale white skin.
Yeah, young, in quotation marks.
Yeah, exactly. Well, younger than he is now, I suppose.
Yes, younger than we all are.
Yep, I don't know. It's a great episode. Top, I don't know, 15, 20 episodes. I have no idea. I don't keep a list, but I love it a lot.
Yes, and yet those Philistines, they didn't make it one of the picks for the Turkey Day Marathon.
They should have. Maybe if we put this episode out earlier, they would have.
Yeah, maybe.
It's available on YouTube for anyone who wants to watch it, though. So
yeah, and they have it on
Shout Factory.
They have it on the Shout Factory site as well.
Yes, however you prefer to watch your Shout Factory things, on the YouTube or on their own site. It's all good.
Yeah,
I think they get money either way.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how ads work. I don't know anything about how the internet works.
No, this is not the podcast to listen to if you want to know more about the internet. We're still acting like we just got it installed in 1995. It's like, whoa, Windows 95 came with that disc that had the Buddy Holly music video on it. Oh my god. In delightful 240p.
That used to be really big.
Yeah, they were big. Not quite as big as these teens, but big.
Well, as you mentioned, there's a lot of cast in this, and that means there's a lot of familiar faces. So 2 episodes in a row, we're going to do a familiar faces rundown.
Oh boy.
And I think we'll begin with, I guess, the star of our film, Tommy Kirk.
Which is weird, because it's like, I could have sworn the star of this movie were those 2 ducks.
I know. Well, sadly, I couldn't find out much biographical detail of the ducks, who apparently were destroyed and cooked for this episode as well.
As you can tell by the giant carcasses that everyone is playing with, those great props.
They're so lifelike. We talked a lot about Tommy Kirk back in episode 33 on Catalina Caper, and so I don't know if we need to talk much about him here, except to say, this is about 2 years before Catalina Caper came out. Does his acting improve over those 2 years?
No.
No, probably not. I forget whether he was drinking or anything at this point, but
Probably.
Nope. He doesn't look any older, at least, or any younger. He still looks kind of in his 30s. I don't think he was, but...
That's just the Tommy Kirk look.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's kind of the 60s look whenever I looked at my mother's yearbook. Just everybody who graduated high school in 1968 looked like they were well in their 30s.
Well, your mom did go to a remedial class, did she not?
Hey now. Anyway, but in addition to Tommy Kirk from Catalina Caper, we also get a repeat appearance of Jim Begg. And Mike and the Bots get very excited about saying the name Jim Begg again and again and again and again.
Yes, I'm not sure why.
I don't know why either. Jim Begg, of course, was Larry, what would you call him?
It was a stooge.
He was the stooge, indeed. He was the one in the rainbow-colored Crayola hat who was the comic relief of the Boatnick couple.
Mm-hmm.
And, so Jim Begg, I mean, he had a career.
Good for him. I would never have guessed.
It wasn't much of one. He was in a Don Knotts comedy called The Ghost and Mr. Chicken.
Oh, man, The Ghost and Mr. Chicken's a great movie.
Oh, good. Okay. It's about a reporter spending the night in a haunted house.
Yeah, it's, and as you can imagine from that plot and Don Knotts, it's a great movie.
Good. I was hoping you had seen it because I haven't. And I know Don Knotts and haunted houses are right up your alley.
Yes. And you know what? It's great to have Don Knotts unleashed without Andy Griffith holding him back.
In fact, speaking of Andy Griffith, Jim Begg also appeared occasionally in the Andy Griffith Show.
Oh, so he was a resident or at least a visitor of Mayberry.
Yeah. He also had a bit role in a 1983 TV movie called The Kid with the 200 IQ.
Okay.
Which was a vehicle for 1983 superstar Gary Coleman from Different Strokes.
Okay. I assume he was the kid.
Which I only bring up because I totally watched this when it came out, when it first aired, and I'd forgotten all about it until I saw this in his filmography. I don't remember what part Jim Begg said. I was just like, oh, wow, the kid with the 200 IQ. I have to mention it because I remember it. That's not inherently interesting, and it maybe doesn't make good podcast, but... I felt like I had to share. It was a burden.
Yeah, sometimes, I mean, if you've got this in your heart, you've got to let it out, Chris. You'll be a lighter person as a result. You'll have a clearer soul.
Jim Begg also, after his acting career kind of fizzled for a bit, he turned to going behind the camera. And he produced a bunch of films, some of which you may have heard of.
Okay.
He produced a film called Leprechaun.
Oh my God.
Yep. And a little film called Children of the Corn 3.
Oh, wow. The Children of the Corn 3. That's right before they started going straight to video.
Yeah. I don't know if that's a good enough legacy for Jim Begg. Who knows?
Well, Leprechaun is. I mean, it's got Warwick Davis using a pogo stick to kill a guy.
Funny you mentioned that because we've also got another person on this movie who was in the Andy Griffith Show, later turned to directing, and made something with Warwick Davis. We've got Ron Howard here.
Yay!
Sort of a younger Jim Begg.
Yes. With similar career trajectories, both of them.
Exactly.
Yeah. Here he plays a kid with a 200 IQ.
That's true.
Ron Howard is... He's actually like pretty good in this, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, he's generally I remember him being perfectly good in the Andy Griffith Show. Mm-hmm. He was good in Happy Days.
Yeah.
As good as you need to be, right?
Yeah. I mean, let's face it. That was Fonzie's show. It was Fonzie's world and the rest of us were just living in it.
Exactly. But yeah, no, he's perfectly fine in this.
Yeah. And of course they make fun of Willow quite a bit. Have you ever seen Willow?
I mean, I have. But it was a long time ago, and I don't remember anything of it. And I didn't sit down to rewatch the movie for this, but I did watch the trailer and a few other things, and it doesn't look very good.
No?
I don't know.
It's a fantasy movie with Val Kilmer. It sounds great.
It's got Warwick Davis in it. That's the thing that appeals to me a bit more. But you know what I did enjoy, though? Not the Willow movie. But when I was a kid, I played the heck out of the Capcom Willow Zelda-like game for the NES.
Yes, I only became aware of that like in recent years, that there was even a Willow game. Like Willow, I thought was this thing that kind of like came and went that nobody talked about. But it's like, no, there's this beloved NES game for like the few who played it.
Beloved might be a bit much, but those of us who only had so many NES carts in our library, and one of them was Willow, and it really put up a challenge at a certain point. It was one of those games, I feel like I've talked about this before on the podcast, but it's one of those games where where at some point you just sort of hit a wall. I was like, I can't figure out where to go. Why won't they invent the internet so I can go to Polygon and find out what I'm supposed to do next? Oh, well, do you have any other thoughts on Ron Howard, director or actor or family man?
I think he's a perfectly fine actor, and I love the fact that his father's name is Rance, who appears in this movie.
Oh, right.
It's Rance. It's just fun to say. However, Ron Howard, I think is weirdly, I would say he's a much better actor than a director, although he's not like a horrible director. His movies aren't terrible, but it's like I find he's really likable as an actor, and he was indeed like one of the highlights of Arrested Development when he was sort of brought back in, not quite in front of the camera, but brought back as a cast member of sorts for a thing finally to be the narrator, where he was just great. I don't know. With his movies, they kind of like come and go. Like I find they're almost like poor Robert Zemeckis efforts. I don't really get much out of them. They're awful sentimental. But although I haven't seen Eat My Dust, which he did for Roger Corman, which I imagine was not those things. But I'm curious. You know, you're the Star Wars head here of those of us on the podcast. Did you ever see Solo, which he directed?
I guess I'm slightly more of a Star Wars head than you are, maybe. But no, I never saw Solo. So that shows you how much I am a Star Wars head.
There you go.
But Solo was a thing. If I remember the story correctly, he was brought in to direct that at the last minute and then just sort of did the best he could and did a workmanlike job with it.
Yeah. I mean, you would expect a workmanlike job from Ron Howard.
Yeah. Like that's my sense of him as a director, is that sometimes he's better than you'd expect, and sometimes he's just what you'd expect, but it's always at least solid.
Yeah. It's something you won't complain about when it shows up on cable.
Exactly. The leader of the bad teens in the movie is played by Beau Bridges, who is, of course, son of gypsy favorite Lloyd Bridges, and the brother of Jeff Bridges, and that's basically all I know about him.
Yeah, it's basically all I know about Beau Bridges is that he's my least favorite Bridges.
Of the ones I know about, anyways, yes.
Because I love Lloyd Bridges and I love Jeff Bridges, but Beau Bridges just kind of leaves you feeling like you missed out on something.
I guess so. I was looking over his filmography and such, and he's had a lot of work and he's been up for awards and seems like he's had a pretty decent career, but none of it looked interesting or appealing or familiar. Yeah,
though that's just it. It's like I find like Beau Bridges' acting is like serviceable. Like he's not irritating, and he's not even like irritating here. He's perfectly fine. But he lacks the presence of a Lloyd or a Jeff Bridges.
I think he's possibly the worst actor in this movie.
Really? I think the other teen, like the other male teen, is probably a little bit worse. Like the other male evil teen?
Yeah, the one who's sour about the world and wants to start a fight?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. They're both pretty bad. I'm not going to decide between the two of them. Anyway, I just felt like I needed to mention Beau Bridges, even though I kind of have nothing to say, but I do have a few things to say about the Beau Brummels.
Okay, I don't know nothing about the Beau Brummels, so go right ahead.
So the Beau Brummels, they were a band from San Francisco, and they were basically the first San Francisco band after the British invasion, which, as you can tell, they were kind of influenced by. They were the first band to break out of San Francisco. There'd be a lot to follow, but they were kind of the first ones with a hit. They had some hits, and you'll find some of those hits on that Nuggets collection that people like so much. Mm-hmm. They're fine. I don't know. Some people seem to like some of their albums well enough, and if you're into this sound, they're fine. I don't know. It didn't do much for me. The thing that I enjoyed was about how they got their name.
Okay.
It is said that they picked the name the Beau Brummels because, first off, it's vaguely British sounding.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know who Beau Brummel was?
No. I assumed it was a malapropism of Beau Bridges.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's Beau Brummel was a fashionista in Regency England in the early 1800s.
Oh.
He was basically if you wanted to look fashionable, you did what Beau Brummel did.
Yeah. Do what Bro Brummel do what Bro Brummel do. I can't even say it.
Exactly. Well, anyway, they chose it allegedly because it was vaguely British sounding, which it is named after a British guy, so sure. And also it comes immediately after the Beatles in the alphabet. So if you imagine at a record store, you're flipping through records, Beatles, Beau Brummels.
Wow, so that makes them the President's Choice Beatles.
They kind of are. Now, they deny that that's why they chose the name, but I don't know. That sounds pretty plausible to me.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree.
The other thing that seemed interesting about the Beau Brummels is that some of their early records were produced by a very young Sly Stone.
Oh, that's cool.
It's very cool, but you wouldn't guess that from listening to it. I don't know. It's fine. I think they're fine in this. It's fine. I kind of like the music that I heard in this more than I like the music that was actually hits of theirs.
Yeah.
But I think that's just because I have a soft spot for this episode.
Fair enough. You know what? I love Nuggets music, but I can't remember a damn thing of the Beau Brummels on either collection that I have. I have Nuggets volumes 1 and 2. So it's like those 2 4 CD collections. And boy, if they're on there, I've blanked it out completely.
It's a song called Laugh, Laugh.
Yeah. Again, not ringing a bell.
Pretty sure that's the one that's on the Nuggets bed. Yeah, I did not recognize it at all when I listened to it. Oh, well.
Au revoir, Beau Brummels.
One person whose music I do remember is Tony Basil, who appears here as Red.
Yes, why is she called Red? That's a mystery I could not figure out.
I know, it's so hard to say. She has massive red hair, and she's doing a frantic dance at one point to distract the large teens.
And she's also the cage dancer, I believe, too. Like, it's the same.
I think so. That would make sense. Because if there's one thing Tony Basil can do, it's dance.
Yeah. In fact, like, she's danced in so many things. Like, she was dancing in, like, Viva Las Vegas, which I have it on good authority as, like, the one watchable Elvis movie.
Yeah, she's done so much choreography work and continues to do it. It's kind of amazing, but she's had a tremendous career. She's probably most known to people for having a hit in the early 80s with Mickey, Oh, Mickey, You're So Fine, etc., which has a famous early music video, like early MTV style music video. You know, how in the first year or two of MTV, quite a lot of the videos had just pure white backgrounds.
Yeah. They look like a dream sequence in Doctor Who.
Exactly. So it's of that style, and they're all cheerleaders. And I'm sure you remember that video.
Yeah. No, of course. That's like, even though that video is before my time, like, I would still see it on, like, occasion. And yeah, it does. It's really, really striking. Like, in terms of the sparseness of it all. And there's some good camera work in it too. I will say that. Like, when the camera decides to change positions, it, like, usually comes up with a cool angle on Tony.
And in it, Tony is a cheerleader surrounded by cheerleaders. They're making all sorts of poses. She's flipping around with her pom-poms. It's wild. And of course, I'm sure you've done the math now. How old was Tony Basil in that video?
Yeah, she was like in her 40s.
She was just shy of 40, yeah. Which is wild. It's one of those things that I did not realize at first. Just like how I didn't realize that was a cover song.
No, I didn't realize that either until I watched, there is a great video about Tony Basil and that song from YouTuber Todd in the Shadows, which we'll have to put a link in our show notes, which goes down her career and that, going from the point of view of that song in particular. That's well worth seeking out if you want to learn more about Tony.
Yeah, in general, the One Hit Wonderland.
Yes, it's a great series.
Yeah, it's a fantastic series. It's so good. The other thing about Tony Basil that I want to shout out because it's amazing is that she did some directing work as well, of music videos in particular. She co-directed with David Byrne the video for Once in a Lifetime.
Yes, that I did know.
Which is an amazing video. And she also directed and choreographed another Talking Heads video from that same era, which is decidedly less well known, but is even better in my opinion. Cross-Eyed and Painless.
Oh, okay.
Just an amazing music video. Great song, great music video. Really weird. I don't know if it ever got any MTV airplay. Doesn't have the band in it at all, of course. But just beautiful video.
Yeah, there's a lot of great stuff from Toni Basil, and then she's had such an amazing career. She was in both Easy Rider and 5 Easy Pieces, which I did not know until I started digging up stuff on Toni Basil. The thing I did know, even though I have yet to watch this movie, is that she starred in a 1988 horror film called Slaughterhouse Rock.
Oh, nice.
Yes, which is she plays a rock legend who unleashes an unkillable demon that the teen cast has to deal with. That I'll watch one day, but it's the source of a single that she wrote with Devo, because Devo did several songs for that for that film, called The Only One, which I totally recommend. It's a really great song.
God, she's done a lot. She's amazing. I love people who turn out to have just been everywhere.
Yeah.
In these kind of small, like maybe they had one little breakout moment, like Mickey, which is just a weird and non-representative moment in Toni Basil's career. But she's had a fascinating life. There's a bunch of other people who we might say a little bit about in the Shallow 13, but I think we do want to highlight one or two more names, specifically Bert I. Gordon, who we don't get to see the face of, but we do get to see his name real big in the title credits.
And boy, is this representative of his catalog.
Here's what I want to argue.
Yeah.
Only knowing Bert I. Gordon from the films that he did, which were on MST3K, which he is the director who has the most films on MST3K's run. And we've only done one of them so far. We did King Dinosaur back in episode 18.
Yeah.
We've got a lot more to do, and we'll probably talk much more about him when we get to those.
Mm-hmm.
But is this the best Bert I. Gordon film? Is this the consummate Bert I. Gordon film?
Well, I would say the Bert I. Gordon films that most represent Bert I. Gordon, not necessarily best, but most represent him, would be either Amazing Colossal Man, or, you know what, I'm leaning more towards Earth versus the Spider.
But this has both a giant Pearson and a giant spider in it.
It's got a giant spider in it, of course, and it's got giant people in it. But it's what exactly do Bert I. Gordon films feel like for the most part? It's they don't really feel like Village of the Giants. Although I will say this is a bit of a hint towards something he would do in the 70s, where he made a couple of sex comedies, and that's kind of what this feels like, albeit a G-rated one.
Well, there you go. The other reason I suggest this is because, so this movie tells us that it's based off an H.G. Wells novel, The Food of the Gods, and how it came to Earth. And we'll get to that in a second. But he would later make another movie based off that novel in the 70s called The Food of the Gods.
Yes.
Starring Marjo Gortner of Star Crash fame, which we covered back in episode 15. It all keeps coming back around again. And that's about, that focuses on giant rats who eat the goo type substance and grow big and then overtake this island. And yeah, it's a big rat movie, which won a Golden Turkey for being the worst rodent movie of all time. Beating out the killer shrews and the mole people, I'm told.
Wow, that's really saying something.
But yeah, so it's also a predecessor for some of his 70s work, sex comedy and hopefully not sex comedy. I haven't seen Food of the Gods. I don't want to see Marjo Gortner in a sex comedy, I don't think.
No, especially if his on-screen companion is a giant puppet rat.
Is there anything else you want to say about Bert I. Gordon before we move on?
Well, he is Mr. Big. There's a kind of cockeyed, enjoyable nature to Bert I. Gordon's movies. There's something kind of welcome about seeing that name appear over and over again on MST3K. So I'm looking forward to diving a bit deeper into him when we get to another Bert I. Gordon feature.
Absolutely. And before we move on, I will say, do you know what the weirdest thing about Bert I. Gordon is?
That the I is for Ira.
That's true. But the weirdest thing is that he's still alive.
Yep, he is still alive.
At the age of 98. If he can just hold on for 2 more years, we're going to have a spectacular Bert I. Gordon Fest in 2022 for his centenary.
Yes, and who knows? Maybe he'll make another movie finally erasing Satan's princess off his last movie ever credit.
It is not his last movie ever. He has made a movie since then called Secrets of a Psychopath in 2014.
What? That's crazy, Bert. I never knew.
It's on his wiki page, anyways.
Yeah. Well, who knows what kind of movie that is, but how secret it is, because he kept it a secret from me.
Well, you can watch it and report back to us in our next episode.
I don't think I'll be doing that.
The final thing I want to talk about is H.G. Wells, because we've seen a few other movies based on H.G. Wells books. And how does this one fare in terms of that?
Whoa, this definitely gets the style down.
Well. So H.G. Wells, this is a novel by H.G. Wells. H.G. Wells wrote some very good novels.
Which ones? Just because I remember reading H.G. Wells did what was it, The Time Machine, and also what was it,
War of the Worlds,
and I didn't like either of those.
Oh, I like both of them plenty.
I like that there's an interview that he does with Orson Welles where seemingly the only reason they're talking to each other is that they have similar last names.
He also did The Island of Dr. Moreau.
Oh, right.
The Invisible Man.
Oh, there you go.
And a few other things. Yeah, I generally like his books. I did poke at this book, which is called, The Food of the Gods and How It Came to Earth. And it's not as good. But in the story, we've got some scientists who are experimenting with growth foods sort of intentionally, and they're not little boy scientists either. They get an experimental farm to test it out. The creatures that grow big start running amok. Eventually, some kids eat it, and then they this is going to be the future of mankind. We're going to feed it to children. They will grow up to be giants, and it'll be the new era of mankind. Some of them do grow up to be giants, but there's a sort of a doodly-doodly-doo, and 20 years later, we look at what's happening. And as they become adults, a politician gets elected on a sort of populist campaign against the giants. Mm-hmm. That's sort of how he gets into power. And that leads to a war between the giants and the rest of the people. And as I understand it, the novel ends with the brink of this war about to escalate. With all likelihood, the giants will win. So kind of interesting. But actually, some of that is weirdly featured in the movie in Village of the Giants, where you've got, scientists experimenting with things, people unexpectedly eating it. You get this clash between the giants, the teens who want to go up against the norms of society and fight and, take control of the town. Like, it doesn't end the same. The vibe is completely different. But it is actually more based on the book than I would have thought, while being completely different.
I never would have guessed.
We've seen things. What was that one? What was that episode we just did where I read the short story and it had nothing to do? Oh, Terror from the Year 5000, right? Yeah. Terror from the Year 5000 had absolutely nothing to do with its source material. This is at least similar.
Well, so that's a firm recommendation to not walk, but run to your local library.
I mean, if it sounds appealing, go for it. You could do worse. I wasn't in the mood this time for it. It's very silly at the beginning as well, actually. So it is meant to be a bit of a comedy at times.
So perhaps Bert I. Gordon picked up on something.
He clearly knew the book and loved it. He made 2 films out of it.
Although, from what I understand, Food of the Gods just feels very different.
Well, Bert, if you're listening, write in and tell us more.
Yeah. Come on, Bert. You're 97 years or 98 years old? 97? 98. You've got nothing better to do than write letters. Come on.
Hey, everybody. It's time for the Shallow 13.
Hey, Teen Gang, it's time for the Shallow 13. 13 fun facts about today's movie and episode, Village of the Giants. Go, Chris, go!
A few more familiar faces, the most familiar of which might belong to Wolf, Ron Howard's pet dog who grows to enormous size. Wolf was played by Higgins, who at the time was appearing weekly as the dog on MST3K favorite, Petticoat Junction.
But neither 174 episodes of Petticoat Junction nor a star turn in Village of the Giants would be Higgins' greatest legacy, for he would later star in the first Benji movie in 1974. When he was no longer able to take on the role of Benji for the sequels, it was passed on to his descendants. Truly, he was the canine answer to Dick Van Patten.
Did that blonde teen squinting behind Beau Bridges look a little familiar? Turns out he's played by Tim Rooney, son of Mickey Rooney, from whom he inherited that resting squint. Tim's acting career started out promising with a role as the son of, Mickey Rooney, in the short-lived 60s sitcom Mickey. Turns out Mickey Rooney was the human answer to Dick Van Patten.
Unfortunately, because of how Hollywood operates, the mediocre female actors in today's film didn't end up with as long-lived and varied careers as the mediocre male actors, so we don't usually have much to say about them. For example, Joy Harmon, who plays Mary? Which one was Mary? Well, anyway, this former Miss Connecticut would later appear in Cool Hand Luke, but before long she retired from acting and she took on a second career, baking. She started a company called Aunt Joy's Cakes, based in beautiful downtown Burbank.
Oh wow, it looks like somebody made a little documentary about her life, going from pinup girl to baker, and called it From Cheesecake to Cheesecake, The Joy Harmon Story. That's a good title. Link in the show notes.
As the teens emerge from their wrecked car at the beginning of the film, Mike quips,
You could learn a lot from a dummy.
This line was first heard in 1986 when a series of PSAs debuted starring the Crash Test Dummies. Not the Canadian band this show made fun of in the 90s, but Vince and Larry, two sentient crash test dummies who'd remind viewers of the importance of buckling up. We'll have a link to a compilation of these ads in our show notes.
The Dummies ads were so popular, they even inspired a line of licensed toys, video games, and even a TV special in the early 90s. But have they inspired any slash fiction? Well, a cursory internet search suggests no. So, listeners, you know what to do.
Tom refers to the giant ducks as
The $1 Million Ducks.
Believe it or not, $1 Million Duck was the title of a Disney comedy about a mallard who laid eggs with solid gold yolks. Yes, really.
Imitating one of the ducks, Crow offers this callback.
What sin could a duck commit in a single lifetime?
That's a play on What Sin Could a Man Commit in a Single Lifetime from Bert I. Gordon's infamous The Amazing Colossal Man, riffed in Season 3.
Spotting a Keanu Reeves look-alike among the Beau Brummels inspires this exchange.
Hey, Keanu Reeves on bass.
I would go to Count Dracula.
Reeves was notably miscast as Jonathan Harker in Francis Ford Coppola's version of Bram Stoker's Dracula, released in 1992.
Hey, I liked Willow. Anyway, as Beau Bridges becomes a giant, Crow quips,
The ravaging effects of Osgood Schlatters disease.
Osgood Schlatter disease manifests as a pain in the knee that can happen during growth spurts, so yeah, that tracks. It's particularly common in boys going through puberty, and especially in active boys, who exercise more than once a quarter, the maniacs.
In the opening segment, as Frank is fired, Dr. F gives him a parting gift for his years of service to Deep 13, a Coneheads figurine. The Coneheads were a recurring sketch in the early days of Saturday Night Live, a family of aliens with giant conical heads just trying to fit into modern America. Why they decided to turn this into a film 15 years later is anybody's guess.
The film did okay, though, even though the critics hated it, and the Red Hot Chili Pepper song from the soundtrack, Soul to Squeeze, was, for a while, inescapable. But, more relevant to this episode, Frank Zappa wrote a song based on the sketches called Conehead, and when Zappa hosted Saturday Night Live, he appeared in a sketch as a guy dating the Conehead daughter.
And that's time. Actually, fun fact, that's one of those SNL episodes that they refused to air because Frank Zappa basically ruined the episode by actively acknowledging that he was reading cue cards and generally just screwing up.
I wondered about that. I was like, I've never heard of Frank Zappa being on Saturday Night Live, but there you go.
Yeah, he was a little bit difficult based on, or at least according to the book Live from New York, the oral history of Saturday Night Live. Apparently, he was behaving himself during the dress rehearsal, and it didn't get that many laughs, so he decided to deliberately be as much of a dick as possible for
Really?
the live recording.
Really, Frank Zappa being a bit of a dick.
Who would have guessed?
Why don't we talk about Frank Zappa for a bit? Because this is an episode that's dedicated to him. He had passed away right when this episode was being taped, I guess.
Sure thing.
Are you a big Zappa head?
Well, here's the thing. When I was a teenager, I had gotten into Frank Zappa, and I enjoyed a lot of his music for like the raunchy humor and the experimental music that he would do, because it's a very, very proggy. At least, like, I find his 70s stuff to be extremely proggy. And now I can't stand it.
You know what? I have exactly the same relationship with him. I was maybe a little bit older when I got into him, and the raunchy humor didn't do as much for me. But around the time he died, I started getting into him because I was like, I don't really know anything about him. He's supposed to be pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Let me start listening to it. And a lot of the stuff really impressed me. It's really interesting musically. Some of the albums were really just neat and strange, and I liked that sort of thing. And I got deep into him I say deep into him. Anyone who's an actual Frank Zappa fan, like, got deeper than I did.
Oh, yeah.
But, I bought about 10 of his albums and such, and from all different stages of his career, which he put out a lot of different kinds of music over his lifetime. And, from the sort of early rock stuff to the very late classical stuff and the weird jazz stuff in the middle. And I liked most of it quite a lot. And yet I can't listen to any of it now.
No,
I still have some fondness for some of it. Like, I get really happy when I'm watching an MST3K episode and they start breaking out into the Uncle Meat song, but I don't want to listen to Frank Zappa ever again.
Yeah, like I'm a big fan of the references to Zappa in the show. And like, I understand some of the deeper cuts, such as for I guess, in comparison to the non-Zappa listening public. Like, there's a great riff where the poodle shows up in, or the little tiny dog, the little rat dog in Manos, the Hands of Fate, and Crow jumps out with "Poodle bites, poodle chews." And it's like, there was a moment, because I was just getting into Zappa when I was getting into MST3K. So the fact that those two were linked, because everyone involved in MST3K is a big fan of Zappa. Joel gave a big shout out to a documentary that Alex Winter is doing on Zappa that's going to come out on VOD soon. Like, everybody still seems to have a real fondness for him, which makes me feel bad, because it's like, I used to, I don't quite as much anymore. I mean, I like Zappa when he is standing up to the Parents Music Resource Center. That's my favorite Zappa, but like, the music I just can't listen to anymore. The only thing this is it. Maybe I've just become like old and unadventurous with my music, because Zappa would get these incredible bands together, and one of the best things I heard from like a kind of basement tapes type series of like live performances of like, oh, here's some stuff that never got released and we're putting it out now, because there's so many Frank Zappa records.
Yes.
There was a cover that they did, like an ironic cover, I think, of well, no, definitely an ironic cover of that song "Ride Like the Wind."
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And they're clearly just doing it to show off and be like, this song sucks, but their cover is really good.
Yeah.
and it's like, it's such a tight performance of "Ride Like the Wind." That it's like, oh man, I wish the real song sounded like this. And I can listen to that, but playing something from Joe's Garage again, it's like, nuh-uh, no thank you.
I think for me, the problem is that I still sort of have a fondness for Zappa. Like, I'm glad I went through a Zappa phase.
Yeah, me too.
But he was so one note, not literally, like literally he played all the notes.
Yeah.
quite fast and quite frequently. But in terms of his attitude, like, he had one facial expression, and that facial expression bleeds through all of his music.
Yes.
And that's neat when you first encounter it, but boy, that gets old after a while.
See, that's why I think that it's best to get him when you're watching him stand up for music and sort of freedom of expression, when Tipper Gore and what he described as the army of wives who were, now that's funny. I have to admit, that's pretty funny.
I mean, in context, yes, but Zappa's take on women in general, I don't know.
Maybe.
But yes.
he's doing the right thing there, as were all the musicians who stood up to testify. But I remember he has a great line where he refers to this whole situation as treating dandruff by decapitation.
Yes.
And he's that's just it. It's like, he was a witty guy. I kind of wish that he had a column. You know what I mean? I wish that there was a readable Zappa where he just sort of complained about things, because I imagine that would have quite a few delightful turns of phrases, even though, again, I imagine that it would be not exactly something you would ally yourself with politically, but it would be funny. At the very least, it would be funny.
Did you ever read his book?
I did
the real Frank Zappa book
a long time ago. All I remember from it is that there's a part, even as a kid, this like rubbed me the wrong way. And I say as a kid, I was probably about like 16 or 17 when I read it, where he definitely makes the argument that his musicians don't deserve royalties.
Yeah.
And it's like, what a dick.
Yep. He was a real dick in many ways, but boy, complicated legacy, I guess.
Yeah, he's a good face for the whole Poe Buddies Nerfic thing. But I will say this: I found something great while I was looking up stuff on Frank Zappa, and I found an article on the AV Club about a guy who could never get into Frank Zappa, and he talks to a rock critic who also had the same problem. And the rock critic had said that he wanted to make a shirt that said, "Yes, even hot rats," which is also extremely funny, because that's the thing that usually comes up with Zappa. If you want to have an entry point, it's like, oh, listen to Hot Rats. That's his most accessible album, Peaches on Regalia, etc. And no.
Fair enough. I mean, that is his most successful album, and I don't know if it's the most representative, but it's the album that you're going to like if you don't like Frank Zappa generally, but that doesn't mean you're going to like it. Well, speaking of music and musicians, I guess we had music in this film by the Beau Brummels, but there was other music in this film too, I guess. Not by the Beau Brummels.
Yeah, this is where we get involved with Jack Nietzsche in a little corner that we like to call the Scorner. Now, I'll take a not so controversial stance and say, the score for this movie is really good.
I don't remember it.
Oh man, that bass riff, that bum 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 bum, is all throughout the score. What's interesting is that that's not even an original piece of music for this film.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a single that was called "The Last Race." And again, it's this lonely bit of surf rock that he re-recorded and rejigged for Village of the Giants. The original version is perhaps more famous because it was cherry-picked by Quentin Tarantino for his movie Death Proof. So you can hear it there. Honestly, I kind of prefer the Village of the Giants version. It's got a bit more interesting use of the strings, and it sounds a little more cinematic. And it also doesn't have annoying car revving noises, as a bit of lonely surf rock would. It's great. Jack Nietzsche was everywhere. He wrote the Iraq prologue music for The Exorcist. He wrote the score for John Carpenter's Starman. He's done a bit of everything, but outside of film music, he was an arranger and conductor for Phil Spector.
Oh,
yeah. Wow. He also was the music director for, are you familiar with The Tammy Show?
Yes. I am.
Yeah. Which incidentally featured Tony Basil as a go-go dancer.
This is a 1964 film about putting a bunch of kids together on stage, I guess, and having a big old show.
Yep, it's like teens are most interesting. I don't know what Tammy actually stands for.
I don't either, but it's fun times.
Yeah, and so he was he did like a little bit of everything. Whilst involved in the Tammy Show, he met the Rolling Stones,
as you do,
and he would go on to play like keyboards on several of their albums.
Oh,
yeah. So, and then just when you think this Jack Nietzsche character has done enough, it's like, please, Jack, You've done plenty. You can sleep now. He also co-wrote the song Needles and Pins with Sonny Bono,
Okay. Do I know that one?
which was famously covered by the Ramones.
Oh.
Yeah. So, and that's a song that I really like. So, I don't know. I felt it was worthy of mention.
Sure.
But yeah, he did, I think, a really great job with this score, and he certainly had an interesting career outside of surf rock music, which was probably the only reason Bert I. Gordon got him. It's like, this is teen music. This guy's perfect.
I've now looked up his wiki page, and he was married to Buffy St. Marie at one point and co-wrote Up Where We Belong with her.
Yes, that's right. I totally forgot about that.
Huh. Boy, he's done a lot of stuff here.
Yeah.
He played with Neil Young for a while.
He's done everything. He's done
He really
absolutely
has.
everything.
He's like Tony Basil.
Yeah. He's the male Tony Basil. All right. Well, I think our growth spurt is finally over. We've said everything that we could say about Village of the Giants and all related info, except, you know what? We probably have time for just one more thing. Chris, is there anything else to say about this episode or this experiment?
Yes, there is. Actually, I feel like I have a million more things to say, but I will satiate myself with just one more thing. There's a moment when somebody enters a room, I think it is, and there's this very curious little harpsichord, and Tom goes,
Scarlatti?
Okay, what does that mean?
Domenico Scarlatti was a composer in the 1700s, the early 1700s.
Okay.
And he's most known for doing a series of keyboard sonatas, most of which would have been played on harpsichord. Hence the joke.
Mm-hmm.
And I bring him up because, that's fine. The sonatas, they're fine. They're fine. Some of them are nice, some of them less nice. They're short, at least. I think the longest one's about 6 or 7 minutes long. But he made 555 of them.
Oh, wow.
Kind of a long listen. But you don't have to listen to all of them individually, because some brilliant person on YouTube has put out a video of all 555 keyboard sonatas played at the same time. And it is my favorite piece of Scarlatti music. It is a video that I turn to more often than you'd expect. I love this cacophony that slowly becomes less cacophonous. As pieces end, it becomes just one piece at the end, and you sort of can make out all sorts of... I think it's a really interesting musical experiment, and I think it's completely successful. And the fact that it's only about 6 minutes long, I don't know, it could be a little bit longer, but it's not much longer if it is. I think it totally works out, and I recommend everybody listen to it. Yes, it's absolute clinky noise at the beginning. Enjoy it. It's great.
Well, I will check it out.
Link in the show notes.
Hooray!
If you've been affected by the issues on today's show, if you've ever starred in a film with Warwick Davis, or if you'd like to ask us anything, get in touch with us. Our website is itsjustashow.com, and we're on Twitter at itisjustashow. We'd love to hear from you. This show is made by listeners just like you. For as little as $1 an episode, you can help us research and record the show, and you can listen to all our superfan bonus bits. Find out more at itsjustashow.com/Patreon or patreon.com/itsjustashow. And if you want to follow up on anything that was mentioned today, you'll find links in our show notes at itsjustashow.com/episode/83. Well, I'm glad we got to do this episode. It's, as I said, one of my favorites. I had a nice time doing it. I had a nice time recording this episode with you.
Yes.
As I always do. What are we going to do next time? And will it be as nice?
Well, we'll find out, because it sounds like initially what we're going to watch is going to be really nice, because the first word is kitten.
Ooh.
But this kitten comes with a whip.
Oh, no.
Yes.
Bad kitten, bad. Oh, I can't get mad at you. Kitten with a whip. Season 6, episode 15.
Yeah.
What a episode.
Yes, it's been a long time since I've seen this one, so I don't know what to say.
Me too. I remember it being pretty good.
Yeah.
Pretty good episode. So I'm looking forward to seeing it again. I'm looking forward to seeing it's Anne Margaret playing the kitten and John Forsythe playing the whip, as I recall.
I assume so.
I think that's how that works.
Might be the other way around.
Might be. We'll find out next time. Otherwise, I hope everybody has had a happy and safe Thanksgiving Turkey Day if you celebrate it, and we will see you next time around. But until then,
Beau Bridges means burned bridges.
bye goo where you work or play. Take it away, Theme Squad.
to use the goo.